Welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning into our video. Today's topic, we'll be digging into some different ways to use SRS while performing an aerial rescue. We'll be going over some effective ways to bring a climber down safely while using basal style tie-offs, and we'll also be jumping into the canopy to show some neat ways to efficiently access and rescue and bring a climber down safely to the ground.
And one thing we're going to be focusing on throughout this quick introduction and throughout the video is mindset. We like to use the term rescue ready. Being rescue ready as a climber, as the rescuer, as a groundsperson is critical for an effective rescue. I've never been involved in a rescue before. I've never had to rescue a climber. I don't know how I would react. I assume that if I'm not prepared, I would be jittery, anxious, indecisive, and most likely unsafe. So being rescue ready, having that mindset and the mentality, obviously you're going to be filling out your tailboards, you're going to be assigning tasks, who's emergency contact, who's rescue 1, rescue 2, and so on. That's all fine and dandy and easy, but when it comes to being mentally prepared, it's something that you should be creating a culture around. So as a climber and as a rescuer. There's a quote out there, it goes something like this. In the event of an emergency, you will not likely rise to the occasion, but you're going to fall to the level of your training. So, I think that's so true because, you don't know how you're going to react. You're not a hero, you're not a superhero, you're not going to be able to fly up the tree in a split second without being prepared. So being ready, being trained, being prepared is what some things we're going to talk about today. And yeah, so like walking around the site, Joel, like what are some things we're going to be looking for on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so let's say you roll up to the job, you're walking throughout the property and you're looking at what needs to be done. So you got a removal, a prune, maybe some stump grinding over there. While you're doing that pre-work assessment, just take a look around. Hey, there's access for a bucket truck. You can drive the bucket truck right into the backyard, perform an aerial rescue. The client has a ladder sitting behind the shed. We can use that, lean it up against the tree, climb up, then tie in, ascend, and do a rescue. There's so many different things to think about. Who's on your crew, what kind of skills you have. Someone's really good at first aid. So, okay, perfect. We got someone that's really good at first aid. I can climb, I can get the climber down safely. So just thinking about what you can use on a day-to-day basis and how you can apply that if there was a rescue that was needed.
Yeah, and speed is definitely a factor. A lot of people assume maybe you're not an advanced climber and you're not comfortable or confident in yourself to be able to perform a rescue. So maybe you think, let's just wait for the fire department to show up and they're professionals, they can deal with it. You're going to be waiting a long time. The fire department, sure, they can show up quickly maybe, but depending on that department and their specialty, maybe they don't have a technical team related to high angle rescue with ropes. Maybe that department is in a different jurisdiction or whatever, so somebody from another town has to come and perform the rescue. In talking to firefighters and what I've heard, you can expect at least a half hour if there's an in-tree rescue. That's the minimum. So half hour is a long time.
That is a long time. If
you're unconscious, I don't know if you've ever tried sitting in a harness pretending you're unconscious. It's very uncomfortable. You're not going to last half an hour. Your lungs are going to collapse. You're going to be long gone before that. Or maybe you're bleeding out in the tree. You're not able to come down. It's going to be a lot quicker than that. So we're talking seconds and minutes. And as arborists, our industry is unique. We have such quick ways to access a tree with ropes, and like we can be up in seconds and we can be down in seconds, right? So as arborists, we need to be prepared, we need to be ready, and make sure that that we're off the ground by the time the fire department gets there. That's another thing too. If you're not off the ground and the fire department shows up, they assume responsibility of you once they're on site. So if you're If you're not off the ground and fire department shows up, then you're not performing that rescue and you have to wait for them. So and that's their big thing, is not creating that second victim, right? So they're not gonna let you go up, obviously, unless you're guaranteed on a separate anchor point and so on. So it's different situations with us. We have a unique industry. We don't climb with rated tie-in points. Every tree is different. Every rescue is going to be different. Just like performing tree climbing tasks, rigging, pruning, it's best to keep an open mind, open concept, and be creative while being safe. If you're climbing and you're loading your tie-in before you ascend, double load it, all right? So that you know it can support 2 climbers. We're going to be talking a lot about quick ways to access. However, what kind of forces are we putting on that tie-in point, right? So you need to make sure that union or that tie-in point is able to be double loaded.
Best case scenario when you're working through the week or you roll up on a job is that you have 2 climbers on site. Some days you might not have 2 climbers, but the best case scenario is to have 2 climbers. Even if you're a lead climber and you have an apprentice with you, setting up that apprentice for a rescue or to be rescue ready is in your best judgment to do. Let's say you're doing a big prune and you don't have any climbers on your crew. The rest are on the ground, they don't know how to climb. So maybe change up your plan of attack, use a lowerable base anchor, and educate your team on how to use that. If you do have an apprentice with you, set up an access line, have the stuff tied, or maybe have it in a bag close to the tree, and just be ready.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about, so much to do, so many techniques out there. We can't cover them all. We're not even going to be able to get into Sparpole rescue, but there's just so many things to talk about. So we only have so much time. We're going to get right into it. We're going to show some interesting stuff, some stuff to think about. But the main thing would be rescue readiness and having that mental, that culture, that safe culture that you're creating. So let's get started. Let's get into it, and let's do some climbing.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Michael, are you all right? All right, it looks like Michael is unresponsive and he's in the tree. What are some of the first things that we can do to determine responsiveness and see if Michael actually needs a rescue? We can go up to his rope. Obviously, if there's no hydro around, you've done your pre-work assessment, but we're just gonna say there's no hydro. Give him a couple flicks with the tail of his rope. You can yell at him, maybe throw a snowball at him. So Michael's not responsive. One of the best things to have on site would be some headsets. Some type of communication headsets, whether it's these headsets with the mic or even just walkie-talkies is great. You can get right into the climber's ear and see what he needs. So we know that Michael needs a rescue. Michael was smart enough to, before he started climbing, he set up an access line in the need of a rescue. So this is a separate anchor. He's on his own anchor, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a pickoff. So I'm going to be ascending this rope, I'm going to swing over to Michael, and we're going to connect to each other and then bring him down. But one of the biggest things about bringing 2 people down on one system is added friction. You need to add friction when you're doubling the weight of a system. Like, you're not always going to be walking around with your gear on, like looking all cool, you got your foot ascender on. My gear was right next to the tree, just in case of a rescue. To cut down on the amount of steps that you need to do, getting ready to climb a tree can take a bit of time. So organization, knowing where your gear is, knowing where it is in your bag and what goes where is key. So even just while you're working, keeping your foot ascender on if they're doing a big hair removal or something, keeping your foot ascender on, it's not in the way, and it's just one less step that you need to do in the event of a rescue. So Michael threw this access line in the tree, just over it. He draped it right over a union. He brought the tail down. So right now this is a moving rope system. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up as an SRS system. So I'm simply just going to tie a running bowline.
Now, Joe, why would you want to switch it to an SRS system? What are some benefits of that? Just quickly.
So let's say Michael's 60 feet in the tree. You think I'm going to be getting to him in a timely fashion by hip thrusting or foot locking up an MRS system? I don't think so. So one of the benefits to SRS is like 100% gain. So every foot you take, you're gaining a foot. And you can whip up the rope pretty fast in the event of a rescue. So this is a running bowline. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to terminate. You always need a backup. So either a Yosemite or back it up with a beaner. So I'm just going to use a beaner. Okay, double fisherman's. Okay, just like so. And I'm just going to clip it back to the line. Okay, that is backed up. That's suitable canopy anchor for SRS. So I'm going to pull that all the way up to the tree, up to the union. Okay, and that's set. Okay, so I've got my system set up. I'm ready to ascend. First things you want to do is just do a load test. So before you climb, you should do a load test. You should always just pop your wrench off because your wrench is not for life support. Your hitch is what's holding you. So I'm just going to sit in my hitch. Okay, it's holding me. And now I'm going to throw on my wrench. And now we're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to utilize my foot ascender. I can just clip my chesty into here to tend my wrench as I'm ascending, but in the event of a rescue, you never know what you're going to be thinking. So you could be flustered, you could forget your chest harness in the truck. Don't freak out, it's okay. You can utilize your lanyard to ascend your wrench on your way up. So you just cross it over your back, clip in, and you can tighten that up, and that's going to tend your wrench system as you're climbing up. So, like we learned in the other video, I'm just using the thunder pumping technique. In this situation, you do need to climb all the way up to your tying point to be able to switch over to MRS. Okay, so from here, Michael, I'm coming, buddy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this beaner. This is my terminated end. And all I'm going to be doing is clipping this end. This is the end of my the tail of my running bowline. And I'm just going to clip it into my hitch climber. Okay? So now when I load that, now that's MRS with added friction from the wrench. So now this is a suitable setup to be able to do a pickoff for your victim. So right now, I made my way up. I got the tail of my canopy anchor, and I'm in an MRS system with added friction from the wrench. Okay, so I've made my way down to Michael. First things first is I want to inspect Michael's gear. So I'm going to inspect his harness. His harness is good, it's all intact, there's no rips, tears, anything. His climbing line is cut underneath his hitch, so I cannot bring him down on his system. There's no bleeding on Michael, but the first thing that if he were to cut himself is that you'd want to dress that wound in the tree. So bring up some gauze, bring up like a first aid kit, and stop that bleeding right away. Our next step is we're going to be attaching our harnesses together. So a hard connect, bridge to bridge. Use whatever you got. You got a sling, you can girth it onto your bridge, like so. Okay, but that's pretty long, and I think I can get away with just doing a hard connect with bridge to bridge. I got this beaner, I clipped it on, and I'm gonna do something here that not much people know about, or they might frown about, but instead of connecting our hard connect to my bridge, like my solid ring, I'm going to clip Michael to the spine of my termination beaner, okay? Just like so. Okay, don't shoot me. Saw this from Rich Hattier, and I thought it was really slick. So we are connected. I'm gonna make Michael a little bit more comfy. He's wearing a chesty because he's climbing SRS, so he's supported, he's in a comfortable position, and now I can disconnect his system off of him, and then we are fully weighted in my system, which has added friction with the wrench. Okay, so we're ready to come down. Stand clear for descent. Okay, so let's say Michael has been in the tree for quite a while, and we're worried about suspension trauma. So the reason why I clipped our hard connect to the spine of my beaner is now I can stand up, just like so, and I can open up this beaner, and I can just step away. And he's connected, he's hanging there for suspension trauma. That's great, not just for suspension trauma, but also if EMS needs to slide a stretcher. If they need to slide a stretcher underneath, then he's elevated, they can throw it underneath, and they can just lay him right down. The last scenario, we sent a running bowline all the way to the top of the canopy. Cody's question was, what if you don't need to go that high to switch over to MRS? What if Michael was about halfway up the tree and you just wanted to go right to him and swing over instead of climbing all the way to the top, grabbing the tail of your running bowline and then coming down MRS? One of the things you can do is we're just going to use a simple alpine butterfly canopy anchor. Okay, drop that in. Now we have a static line here, and it's also retrievable. So you tie on your system. So you have your system, you tied it, you ascend up. Now in order to switch over to MRS from here, you grab the retrieval end of your rope, tie another alpine butterfly, and you can clip that into your hitch climber just like we did up top. And now when you rappel, that's also a moving rope system. And that just saves you from having to go all the way up to the top, grab that tail, come down. Now you can just ascend to the height that your victim is at, and you can swing over and grab him from there.
Okay, so Joel showed one way to do a pick-off. I'm going to demonstrate another way to do a pick-off with added friction below my hitch. Okay, so Joel simply added a moving rope system. I'm going to stay stationary, and I'm going to add friction below my hitch. However, in this case, he needs to be lifted out of the union. He's really crammed in there. Maybe he had a bit of a fall. So he's stuck in a union, and his system is compromised, so he can't come down on the system. So I'm going to get over to Michael, assess his injuries again, go through all that stuff, assess his belt. It's good to connect bridge to bridge. So that's one of the first things I'm going to do, is connect bridge to bridge with the beaner. Luckily on my Petzl Sequoia I have a second bridge. I can just simply connect right to his. I'm going to do, first things first, I'm going to do that. I'm going to secure him to me, and I'm going to make him as comfortable as possible at the same time, utilizing his chesty. If he doesn't have a chesty, you can utilize their lanyard as well. Anyway, so we're good to transport. I just need to get him up out of this union. So a quick way to add some mechanical advantage. If your climber is 180 pounds, you're not going to be able to lift up on a single line to get him up out of that union. So a quick way to add some mechanical advantage is with a hand ascender. This is the ISC Super Safe hand extender. It has a large eye on the bottom and also a connection point up top for backup. And I know using a toothed ascender on rope as your primary attachment or whatever is frowned upon, and yes, it can cut through the rope, but I'm gonna have no worries utilizing something like this in a rescue situation. So just a bit of a disclaimer there, don't use toothed ascenders as your primary tie. In this case, we're using it to bring Michael up a little bit. But you basically attach your ascender within reach, and I'm going to utilize the Petzl roll clip on the bottom. That big eye, I can just feed that through, and we have the nice pulley there. You can use a beaner, you could use a revolver, whatever you want. And I'm going to take his tail and clip that in. Okay. Now I can either pull on this if I'm feeling strong, but if I'm feeling like I need a bit more weight, you can use your foot ascender. I can really lean into my foot ascender. So I'm going to attach that here. Another advantage of having a foot ascender on and ready in a rescue situation. Okay, so I'm going to really just put my whole weight into it. I'm going to grab that foot ascender and hand ascender and just pull as much as I can. So now I can utilize that mechanical advantage and bring Michael up out of that union, like so. Okay? So you're creating a mechanical advantage in your favor to just bring him up and out of that union. Okay, so it's good. We're connected bridge to bridge. Now before I unhook his system, I need to add friction, right, on my system. So below your hitch, some simple ways to add friction. I have a figure 8 here. You can put the rope through the figure 8. You have to take the spinner off, put it through the figure 8, reattach it, add friction that way. I have the Piranha here as well. I like using the Piranha. It's a device you don't need to unclip. So I'm just going to run my rope through the Piranha and through that beaner. Don't need to unclip. It also has these prongs here that you can use to wrap and add extra friction if you need to actually lock it off. I don't think I'll need to. I'm just going to leave that like that. Okay, so now I've added friction. I'm ready to accept Michael's weight. So I'm going to come down on his system. I'm not going to worry about messing around with that. I'm just going to get his weight into mine. He's now slack. I can unclip. Okay, we're good in that sense. Okay, so now I've added friction here. I've got two working hands. I can hold that belay line and I can start to descend and add that friction underneath my hitch. Okay, so it acts as a brake as well if you need to break it off and do something, maybe push off or work or assist in any other way. You basically undo the brake, you continue down with that added friction underneath your hitch. Okay, so a figure 8, or this is called the Petzl Piranha. Any figure 8 will do to help add that friction for a pickoff. Okay, so we showed a quick way to create mechanical advantage in your favor to hoist a climber out of a union using a hand ascender. If you don't have a hand ascender, there's many other options that I just want to quickly touch on. Not everybody has a hand ascender these days. So some other options are thimble pressic. I have the Petzl roll clip in there, so you quickly put that on. That cinches up nicely. Another piece of gear you could use a sling. You could use a sling as well by tying a climb heist. Okay, if you don't know the climb heist, you should recommend learning the climb heist. It's basically as many wraps as you want, and you capture the top loop and choke down on it. So it's very secure, and there's no way that that's going to slip. So you can use a sling, tying a climb heist. You can also use it eye to eye in a beaner with an English pressic or whatever. So yeah, lots of options if you don't have the gear. to create that mechanical advantage hollow system. The reason we're doing a few variations of pickoffs is a lot of times in an emergency we assume that maybe the rope is cut. In our industry, there's lots of sharp objects, there's handsaws, there's chainsaws. So more than likely in the event of an emergency or maybe a cut limb or whatever, cut their arm, the system's going to be compromised. So that's why we're spending a bit of time on variations of pickoffs. We're going to do one more, incorporating a Petzl ID. Okay, you can use the Petzl ID or the Petzl rig for this scenario. I'm going to be using the TAS for access. Using the ID or the rig or the ISC D4, it's called, for ascent is very inefficient. So it's not an ascent device. Okay, you can ascend with it, but so it's a very slow process to ascend. I'm not even going to get into that because nobody's ever going to utilize these for that reason. So a very quick and easy, efficient way to ascend a tree. This device here is the TAS. Now you say, why can't I use the TAS for double loading? It's because it's not meant for that. Okay, so the TAS specifically is a one-person device. It doesn't have that capability to be double loaded. Okay, so, but for ascent, instead of tying my hitch and putting a rope wrench on, I'm just gonna slap the TAS on. You can use a Kimbo or whatever. I'm just gonna use this in this situation. Very quick. Okay. Now at this point, I need to switch and transfer to my rig. So you can install the rig while it's attached in the rope, retrieve belt, sorry. You just basically slap it on there, tension up as high as it'll go. Now I'm in a bit of a situation because I need to get this device off and utilize the rig only. So I'm going to lower the rig a bit. I'm going to slack off my TAS. And I'm basically going to unclip my TAS, just like so. And then I can sit down. I can sit down into my rig. Okay. Bit of a process there. Takes a bit of practice to get, so that's why we practice. Okay. So now I'm slowly in my rig. Now I can go over to Michael, do my usual assessments, stuff like that. Okay. I'm going to attach Michael bridge to bridge. So now he's in my system. I'm ready to descend. Okay, there are some specific things you need to remember about using the ID of the rig when you're double loading. Okay, if you look at the manual that's provided, you can just go online and find this information. When you're double loading this with two persons, it's got a 200 kilogram limit, so 440 pounds. That's quite heavy. I'm confident with my weight and Michael's that we're good. So basically you gotta add a beaner here, connect it to that beaner, put the rope through there, and instead of pulling down, you need to have your arm, your belay hand in this position, okay? I can now slack Michael off and get rid of his system. It's obviously a two-hand device, like most belay devices, and you can, with your arm in that up position, because you're creating another bend, basically adding friction, you can begin to descend. Double loading this device. 200 kilogram limit, just another variation of a pickoff.
I want to set up an access line in the event of a rescue. So I did the same thing. I sent up an alpine butterfly canopy anchor. Let's say I don't have another rope to set up and drape over this limb as a rescue line. Some of the benefits of using a canopy anchor with a retrieval end is now there's two legs of rope coming down. Obviously one is stationary, one is retrieval. So I can actually just use a sling, whip it around that branch, and I can just tie an alpine butterfly, and I can clip it here. Now what that does is this part of the rope is now stationary and it's on a separate tie-in than mine. Let's say I'm not too keen on having two climbers ascending up on one anchor. So now I've just created two anchors. The only downfall of this is that it's obviously not retrievable. So you can do your climb, you can be comfortable knowing that you have a rescue line installed, and then when you're finished your climb, just swing over and unclip this, untie that, and come down to the ground, and then you still have your retrieval end to retrieve your canopy anchor.
There may be a time in a very specific situation where you don't have an access line set up, or this is just the quickest, most efficient way to get up to the climber. So it's always best to have two separate anchor points. However, there are times when you might want to double load that anchor and utilize the climber's line, either the retrieval end or the tail end. In this case, we're going to show to ascend up to the climber in the most efficient way. So again, just disclaimer, there's better ways, but this is a way that we have found to be very smooth and efficient. So we're just going to show it to you. So this is a Rope Runner Pro, and we had contacted Kevin Bingham, the inventor of the rope wrench and the Rope Runner, and just mentioned this to him, this technique. So basically, if you're running a runner on your system, there is a way that you can stack a runner underneath and stay attached. You're on separate systems in order to bring the victim down. So we're just going to go over how that's done and the scenario. So the scenario is there's no access line. He's got a running bowline sent up. Maybe he's out on a limb or whatever. If you're going to ascend up the fall of his rope and he has a lanyard on, you could be putting a lot of force on that climber's body, like torquing sideways. So you really want to make sure that if you're going to ascend up the fall of his rope, that the climber is in a comfortable position. Basically, you come up the line with your runner, and you position yourself beside the climber. So you position yourself beside the climber, and you cinch right up to the base of his runner. Okay, it's easier now without two bodies in the way, but it can be done. Okay, so both systems are loaded. This is the rescuer system underneath, and this is the victim's system on top. Basically, you stay tied into your system, he stays tied into his, and you can tend the top one, and that'll automatically tend the bottom one. Okay, so you're stacking a runner underneath a runner, and you're basically able to, by tending one device, tend both. Okay, super slick. We tried it other ways, just coming to the side, and it has the same effect on the runner beneath. Basically, how this works with these mechanical devices is because the rope doesn't require to be bent as much as it does with like a wrench or the chicane. Because of these longer plates and the bend ratio, the bend factor is when you do descend, there's not much bend in the rope. It's more of a gradual curve. You're able to utilize this by stacking two devices. Yeah, we did talk to Kevin. He liked the idea. He also has a YouTube video where he shows stacking the runners for this purpose. Kevin Bingham, YouTube, check it out. So this is runner. Now you can utilize the akimbo as well. We're gonna demonstrate it with the akimbo just like this. The akimbo has kind of the same features when you descend on the akimbo. The rope doesn't bend too much, right? It's just these metal cams, kind of just, it's a gradual bend, whereas the wrench puts more of a acute bend on there. This is why you can use the akimbo as well for this scenario. Victim, rescuer would come up the fall of his rope, position himself underneath. right underneath the system. And then would again just reach up on the upper device. Now you can line these up opposite or sideways. It has the same effect. You basically would come down, reach up to the climber, and then just tend his akimbo, and it has the same effect. Tending the bottom one at the same time. The benefit to this obviously is just the one hand function. Super efficient, and yeah, you basically have one hand, the other hand's good for your belay hand, and yeah, so you can use this in a rescue situation that's very specific. We also figured, oh, we might as well try the Kimbo with runner, and I'd be happy to say same effects. Same thing, to the side, opposite, or sorry, in line or opposite, all have the same effect. Definitely gear specific and scenario specific, only works with the Kimbo and runner because of that bend factor. The wrench and a chicane, pencil chicane above a zigzag creates too much of a bend, so you cannot utilize this. But anyways, that's some options. And again, it's best to have two tie-ins, two separate anchors, but in this case, you can utilize these tools for that reason.
Okay, so I know this is an SRS based course, but we're going to just show you something quick. With an MRS system, this also applies to an SRS system as well. Let's say that Michael here has cut his arm, okay? And he's in the tree and he needs to hold pressure on his arm or else he's going to bleed out. So for whatever reason, he can't come down on his hitch, but he can quickly utilize the Revolver, help him with the ground assisted lowering technique. So this technique is called the GALT, acronym for ground assisted lowering technique. So Michael has a Revolver on his belt and he's holding pressure on his arm. So he gets the Revolver, clips it above the hitch, and you'll see when I orientate it, but it's going to kind of sit this way. So the smaller part of the Revolver fits perfectly around the diameter of the rope, and it's used to break the hitch to rappel down. So I'm just going to throw this on to show you. So you can get a close-up on it. So it's just going to sit just like that. Okay. Next, what Michael's going to do is he's going to get the fall of his rope, and he's going to clip it into the Revolver. Okay. Now Michael can be like, hey, Joel, I need a rescue. Just pull down on the fall of my rope. And I can pull down and it's going to break his hitch and it's going to lower him. Need a bit more weight. But yeah, you can see the action that it's working. but Michael is very light. I think he's only about 10 pounds right now. So you can see how that works. We're going to show you the same thing in the SRS configuration. Okay, so now Michael's climbing on an SRS system. So we're just going to be doing the same thing. Michael has the Revolver. He's going to clip it on above his hitch, and he's going to attach the fall of his rope inside the Revolver like that. And he's going to say, all right, Joel, you can lower me down to the ground, and I'm just going to collapse the hitch. And it's going to slowly come down, just like so. Takes a bit of practice to get used to, but it is doable. It's a great technique just for those very specific scenarios. Yeah, the Revolver is great. I always have it on my belt for whatever reason, redirects, stuff like that. But in the case of an emergency, it's just good to have on your belt just for that type of scenario. So I think that's all we've got to do with Michael. So we're going to put Michael away, and we're going to jump outside, and we're going to get climbing in some canopies, into some trees. Thanks, Michael. You've been a great sport.
Bye.
Okay, so we're getting into base anchors, lowerable base anchors. One of the most basic base anchors that you can do is just simply a running bowline around the base of the tree. The problem with running bowlines is that it only bites the one way. So let's imagine that this tree here is a really wet, slippery beech tree, smooth bark, and you're hesitant on just tying a running bowline and having that base anchor slip up. Something you can do is called a bi-directional bowline. So I'm going to show you how to tie it. So you got your shot, you're going into a base anchor. Just going to bring the rope around the tree, and we're going to capture the standing part of our rope, pull out some slack. Okay, so that's it. That's just a half hitch around the base of the tree. Now we're going to bring the rope back around this way, all the way around. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to capture the top part of that rope, and we're simply just going to tie a running bowline, and we're going to back it up with the Yosemite. Okay, there's my bowline and Yosemite. There we go. So now, might look kind of sloppy at first, but what you can do is if you start pulling this thing this way, you go that way, and just keep walking it back and forth. This is actually a self-cinching knot, and now that knot bites both ways, so that's not going anywhere, even on a slippery bark tree. But I'm going to show you a quick and easy way that anyone can do, really simple, just to make it lowerable.
All right, let's see it.
So this is our base tie. What I'm going to do, reach up about as high as you can reach, just like that, pull it down, just tie a simple alpine butterfly, just like so. And now pull that tight, so it's just sitting right there. Now, something that almost everyone should have is just a simple basic moving rope system. Because my bag is right there, I have my harness, so in the need of a rescue, I can just quickly throw my harness on. I don't need any other gear. I have my moving rope system, and I'm just going to slap a beaner in that butterfly, and then my moving rope system, I'm going to clip it back to me. So now Cody's weight is 100% in this system. I'm going to choke up on this as high as I can go. Okay, and I'm just going to give it a little bounce. Just enough like that. If I need to get a little bit more, I can pull down on that, give another bounce, and that is transferring Cody's weight into my system, just enough so that I can untie his base anchor. So now I'm ready to untie Cody's base anchor and I can lower him down to the ground. One of the things I'm going to do first is I'm just going to add a bit of friction here. So put that through, put that in. Okay, so now I have added friction on my moving rope system. So I'm going to go ahead and untie Cody's base tie. Okay, there we go. So Cody's base tie is off and my weight is holding Cody up. So one of the benefits of doing something like this is, let's say I'm lowering Cody and he gets hung up on a branch, I can actually walk over to the tail of his rope. I can move around and he's not going anywhere. I can move around and maybe move some stuff out of the way, or I can grab his tail, pull him out if he's getting hung up on a branch, and I can meet him as he is coming down to the ground. So that's one of the benefits. The downfalls of this system, let's say the tree's on a hill like it is right now. If I'm walking around and I slip, Cody might get a little bit of a shock load or a jump. Okay, so we're gonna be kind of doing the same thing, but instead of connecting it to me, I'm just gonna connect it straight to Cody's base anchor. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna connect this system right to his base anchor. Okay, I'm just gonna tighten that up. Now before I do anything, I'm also just gonna add some friction underneath my system. Okay, so now I have that figure 8 added friction underneath the moving rope system. So you're probably wondering, how can I slack off Cody's base tie? Simply just by going to give this a good pull out, and you're going to be tightening up your moving rope system like that. Okay, there we go. So I got some slack in Cody's base tie. Hopefully I can just squeeze his base tie out like that. So now he's completely suspended in my moving rope system that's attached to his base anchor that he's already installed. Now I can hold this friction and I can lower him with the moving rope system.
So to conclude, base anchors, they definitely have their use and their advantages. There are a lot of disadvantages, and there are a lot of variables and factors in order to be able to use a lowerable base anchor effectively. The climbers at all lanyarded off to the tree, you're not going to be able to use a lowerable base anchor. If the climber is above lots of branches, unions, tree parts in the way of the descent, you're not going to be able to manipulate that climber very well with a lowerable base anchor. So there's a lot of factors, but yeah, definitely a big advantage to be able to lower somebody from the ground when you can. But I'd say more than likely you're going to have to ascend up that tree anyways, but these are some tips and some things that we've found, simple, quick and easy ways to use a base anchor.
I sent up a simple Alpine Butterfly canopy anchor on a Union. Me and Cody both load tested it. So the Union is substantial in size, and it's good to hold both of our weights. So what we've done is you can either set up an SRS system on your retrieval end and have that ready just to be rescue ready in the case of an emergency. And as long as I'm loading this, as long as my weight is in this system, we have no problem with Cody ascending up my retrieval end to perform a rescue. I'm in need of a rescue. Now Cody is going to be ascending up the retrieval side of my system here.
So again, just to reinforce the fact that this is a situational rescue. Again, so many variables in our industry, but
in terms of rope access, maybe you don't have a second access line independent of Joel's climbing line available. Utilizing the retrieval end, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you've load tested that anchor point, utilize this very efficiently. So I simply have a system ready to go. This is the Kimbo. You could have a wrench even pre-tied, ready to go, to be rescue ready. At this point now we can just, perform the rescue. There are some variables to sending up the retrieval end, which we'll address next in the video, but in terms of direct access to the climber or to the tree, it's a great technique.
Let's just imagine that this tree is a huge, widespread tree. Let's say I've done my work on this side, and I'm going to be working over on that side. Some of the techniques that we can do is if I know that I'm going way over there, I'm just going to take my retrieval line with me. Just going to clip it onto my harness, onto a bean or something. So now I'm over here. This is the side of the tree that I'm going to be working on. I landed in here. I need a rescue line on this side of the tree. So just grabbing my sling, just going to put it around a branch or the stem. And then I'm going to get my retrieval end. And I'm just going to simply tie an alpine butterfly. And I'm just going to lock it off, clip it right into this side. So now, as I'm working over on this side of the tree, I have a quick and an independent anchor other than my tie-in that Cody can come up and rescue me, and he's going to come straight over to this side of the tree instead of ascending up on the other side of the tree. This technique is great, but you can also do it right underneath your tie-in on a larger branch. Simply just tie a butterfly, connect it to a sling around a strong branch, and that gives you two independent anchors, one for a rescue and one for your climbing side. The downfalls of this, obviously it's not retrievable, so you will have to come and unclip it and untie it before you carry on. It's just a neat little trick to give you a little bit faster of a rescue if you plan ahead. So one line, you don't need tons of excessive gear, just a little bit of thought, and you can have a rescue line and take that rescue line wherever you go in the tree. All right, everyone. So that concludes our talk about SRS with aerial rescue. We trust that you picked up some of these cool techniques, and we just hope that you can put them into your day-to-day practice on the job, bring them to your company, and just share them with other arborists that you encounter.
Yeah, I mean it's an evolving industry. Things change, techniques change, so we're constantly having to adapt to being emergency ready. So it's never going to be one way or this way. That's the beauty of our industry, and we touched on a few things, and we hope that you enjoyed it. And thanks to ISA Ontario for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And yeah, emergency readiness. So you're not going to rise to the occasion. You're going to fall to the level of your training. Let's just keep sharing and going through this as an industry together. So thank you.
Thank you.